Reading with your kids.
Hola, niho, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very happy that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Chaser, Podcast Addict, Good Pod. You kind of get it. Wherever you find podcasts, you can find the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest today is Francine Piriano Davila. She is here to celebrate her middle grade debut novel. It's called Cloud Monsters. Before we invite Francine into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change. Book 1 in the Bella Santini Chronicles by Angela Lee. The Bella Santini Chronicles features an ordinary girl who discovers she is extraordinary. A villain desperate to take control of the world, and a queen hiding a secret. This is a classic tale of good versus evil, where Bella Santini, the chosen one, destined to rid the world of evil, is pitted against her evil aunt, with the fate of the Fey world at risk. This fast-paced fantasy adventure story targets young readers ages 8 to 12. The series is packed with great emotional intelligence lessons, encouraging children to face their painful feelings, shift out of perspectives that do not serve them, and let go of blaming others. Check it out today, Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change by Angela Lee. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by Scott Feld. Scott Feld is the best-selling author of Dax to the Max. He's also a creator, a speaker, a presenter of Minds in Motion Power Parties and Power Quest. Scott's mission is to help kids discover the inner superpower that we all have, but most of us don't know about. And because we don't know about it, well, we can't use those inner superpowers to benefit our lives. Scott helps kids find the keys to unlock our inner superpowers to become unmessable with, or unmesswithable. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's a good thing. It means empowered from inside and out. Dax to the Max specifically shows kids how their imagination can trump any fear in any situation. Please check out all the fantastic things that Scott is doing at mindsinmotion.com. And be sure to pick up Dax to the Max at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And did I mention Dax to the Max is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read. Join us right now for one of my favorite places in the world, Northern Virginia. Our guest today is here to celebrate her debut middle grade novel. It's called Cloud Monsters. Please welcome to the show, Francine Piriano Davila. Hey, Francine, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I can't wait for you to tell us all about Cloud Monsters.
Sure, I would love to. Well, I wrote Cloud Monsters for kind of middle school age kids around 9 through 13 years old. It follows a family, parents and 2 brothers. Jack is the older brother. He's a teenager and he actually narrates the story. And the story actually starts off great. It's a beautiful sunny day. They're having a birthday party for Jack's little brother, Charlie. They're playing games. They're having a great time. They're jumping, bouncing, eating cake, having pizza. When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the sky gets almost black. These large, ominous clouds start rolling in. It gets really, really cold. And everyone thinks, oh, it's just a thunderstorm, a bad thunderstorm that will pass. But actually, they don't know that it's something much more sinister. These clouds suddenly kind of turn into monsters and they start invading the earth and they start taking Jack's family and his friends. And initially, Jack and his family managed to get away. They try to escape these monsters and they encounter these difficult obstacles along the way. And throughout the book, Jack is conflicted. He doesn't know whether these monsters are good or whether they're evil. Are they trying to hurt the people of the earth or help them? And so Jack and the reader, they kind of try to figure out the intentions of these monsters. So it is kind of like a guessing game. You do find out at the end of the book, but it is kind of fun to try to guess the intentions of these monsters and if they're good or evil.
Wow. I was thinking last night, coming home from dinner with my beautiful wife and my niece. We're coming home, and there was, clouds in the sky, but there were these 3 little clouds. They were black, and they were lower than the other clouds, and they were moving across the sky very fast, independently of the other clouds. And I was just fascinated by them. I think clouds is something that have fascinated humans forever.
Yes, I've always been fascinated with clouds, and I actually came up with the idea of cloud monsters by actually being in the middle of a storm and looking up at a cloud, and the idea just kind of popped in my head, and I said, you know what? I can picture kind of monsters jumping out of these clouds.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of our very oldest ancestors and their, reactions and thoughts about these big, white, puffy things, and sometimes dark and ominous things that are so huge and tower over them.
Right. You just never know. I mean, it may look like a normal, regular cloud, but you just never know what could jump out of the cloud. It's just, clouds can be very scary and intimidating. Mm-hmm. So I figured, what better idea to come up with would be cloud monsters and have them turn into actually monsters.
Yeah. So what inspired you to write this book for this age group?
Yes, I've always loved science fiction ever since I can remember. Any book or movie that had an alien or space in it, I loved. The Time Machine, War of the Worlds, my two favorite books of all time, and that really inspired me to write Cloud Monsters. I kind of wanted to pull kids into this whole kind of fantasy science fiction world and try to get them excited about it, as excited as I was as a kid reading it. It just kind of takes you into this other world, and I really wanted to write a book for other kids and just get them excited about science fiction and suspense and hopefully enjoy it.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned War of the Worlds. Mm-hmm. And I remember listening. I wasn't quite old enough to have heard the original radio broadcast, but I heard that original radio teleplay. And I had 2 thoughts when I was listening to it. One, aren't the people getting that there are commercials, and how did everybody fall for this?
Right.
But then the second thing was that everybody fell for this. It created a panic. And I'm wondering, and that was done, written playfully, like your book, to entertain. What do you ever sit back and think, wow, there's going to be a whole lot of middle school kids up at night thinking about this book, maybe, checking over their shoulder for clouds, kind of scared in a fun way?
It's funny. It's funny that you mentioned that. There are actually a couple of kids. I have, two younger nephews, and their mother had read them the book, and they actually now look up at the clouds and always wonder if there's going to be monsters jumping out of the clouds. So it does kind of scare some kids to a point, but hopefully older kids, wouldn't be too scared. But you never know. I mean, it does kind of have that effect where you read the book and you don't look at a cloud the same way.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the great things about your book is that kids are going to be looking at clouds and being more aware of clouds, because really, for the most part, a lot of us walk through our day and never even look up.
Right. I think they'll be more fascinated with the clouds and want to learn more about them, because they really are. They're very fascinating. Just to kind of sit there and look up at the clouds, I can probably do that for hours. And I think after reading this book, I think more kids will kind of be wanting to look more at the clouds and learn more about them.
Yeah. Have you always been fascinated with clouds in nature?
Oh, yeah. Definitely a nature person. Always been fascinated with clouds. I'd always kind of sit there with my kids, and we would always look up at the clouds and try to find different shapes, the clouds. I've always been fascinated with science fiction and clouds and space. That's one reason why I did write the book. It's just, and I enjoyed writing it so much. I'm just so fascinated with science fiction. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. You know, we've had different authors on. There's a group called the authors group called the Spooky Middle Grade Authors, and we've talked about, and we haven't found a definitive answer. It's why do you think kids, especially at this age, love to be scared so much?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's just the way maybe it makes them feel. The adrenaline kind of, pumps up, and it just makes them feel, really good to be scared. Me personally, I don't like being scared, but, kids, middle school age kids, they just love it. They just love the adrenaline. They love going into haunted houses and reading scary books and movies. So they just love it.
Yeah. I've shared this on the podcast in the past. When I was a kid, all the way through my 20s and 30s, I loved spooky, horrific stories. Stephen King, I would read everything. I read that, I think it was The Stand. It was 8 million pages long, and a scare on every page. And, of course, The Shining and Anne Rice. And I love those books until the moment my son was born. And I was literally halfway through an Anne Rice story, and my son was born, and, we're up with my wife and the birth and everything, and we're really tired. And I sat down and I picked up that book where we left off, and I said, nope, I don't want to be in this world anymore. And I shut the book, and I haven't picked up a scary horror book ever since. Becoming a parent changed the way I looked at the world.
I completely agree with you. It's funny that you mentioned Stephen King, because he was my all-time favorite author, especially as a teenager. Reading Pet Sematary and Misery were my two absolute favorite books by him, and they are the scariest books you've ever read. So I completely agree with you. I don't know if I would read those books now, because you're right. I mean, things change as you get older, but Stephen King, you can't surpass him. He's a great author.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Have you always dreamed of being an author or a children's author?
I have. Ever since I can remember, I've always wanted to write books for kids. I wanted to get them reading. I always wanted to write books that kind of, taught kids something. And in Cloud Monsters are a couple of things that, couple of lessons that maybe kids can learn from the book. Firstly, what usually a character in one of these situations will kind of break away from the group and try to save that group or try to save the world from these aliens or monsters. But in Cloud Monsters, I wanted to kind of have the family stay together and support each other. I know Charlie and Jack, Jack is the older brother, and he protects Charlie throughout the book. I just wanted kids to know that if there is a conflict or some type of issue, you can always rely on your family and friends there to support you. So I kind of wanted them to kind of take that away from the book as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange coincidence. My daughter and her fiance and I were together this weekend, and we were talking about a really dark time in our family. We had my father-in-law was in a coma. My mom was failing and approaching her last days, and the bills were mounting up, and I had 2 kids in private high school, and, I couldn't go on the road as much because people were sick, and it was a terrifying time. And, one of the things my daughter asked me is, how did we get through that time? And we get through it because we stuck together.
Right. You need to work together. I think that really helps you get through difficult times, just to be with other people and support each other and be together. That really does help. With Cloud Monsters, they stuck together, even though it was, a difficult situation. They stuck together and they kept each other safe.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that as families are hopefully reading or co-reading Cloud Monsters together, that it would be a good opportunity and maybe a helpful opportunity for parents to kind of share difficult situations that they might have gone through and in their past, and the only way they were able to get through it was by being together, sticking together as a family unit?
Oh, definitely. Yes. I think that parents definitely should share a story of their past where they did have to go through a difficult situation and they managed to rely on their family or their friends to get them through it. And they actually did get them through it. And I think it will help kids kind of learn, you're right. I can go to my mom or my dad or, my friends and have them help me and ask for help. Because really they're the only people there that will be with you and support you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think when you first reached out to be on the show and you told me that the title of your book was Cloud Monsters, I think I might have written back saying, oh, my family and I had such a great time in the cloud forest. How could I not invite you on? And the reason was when we'd been to rainforests before, but in Central America, the folks referred to the rainforest as the cloud forest. And that idea of being in a forest on a mountain that was regularly enveloped by a cloud really, it made the experience really different. Even though when I was in the rainforest in Puerto Rico, we were in the clouds, it just wasn't there. That image wasn't in my mind. And this whole idea that, we can fly through clouds or we can be walking in a cloud on a mountaintop in a cloud forest somewhere. It's really an amazing, amazing thing. Sometimes it's hard to get your head wrapped around it.
Right. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And I can imagine just being inside a cloud. It's just, it's just an amazing feeling. It's it's just something probably that you can't describe. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Cloud Monsters is the first in a series of books. Are you sticking with the theme of clouds in the future books, or are there going to be other natural phenomena that turns into monsters?
Well, I'm definitely sticking with the Cloud Monsters, but there'll be new characters as well. And I can't really go into it too much, but there'll be some new kind of scary characters as well. But I am sticking with the Cloud Monster characters. But there'll be some new twist and turn and some new characters as well in the new book.
That's awesome. Hey, Francine, I know people are going to want to know where they can go to find out more about you and also find out more about Cloud Monsters.
Sure, I do have a website, and it's my name. It's Francine Piriano Davila.com, and you can find out all the events and anything you want to know about the sequels regarding the series of Cloud Monsters. Everything you need to know will be on that website.
Awesome. We've had a really fun time speaking about the debut middle grade book, Cloud Monsters, written by our guest, Francine Piriano Davila. Hey, Francine, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I had a great time. It was a pleasure to be here.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Jamie Rotante. She is the senior editor for Archie Comics. It's a really fascinating look at a classic comic that has been around for over 80 years. Can you imagine that? Archie is over 80 years old, and it is morphed into so many different things. It's really an eye-opening conversation. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Hey, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok. Be sure to check out our Reading With Your Kids page on Pinterest. And if you are on Twitter, please be sure to follow us at Jedley Magic. And of course, we would absolutely love it if you could go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. The first thing we would love for you to do there is to sign up for our free newsletter. In June, we are relaunching the newsletter. It's going to be jam-packed with author profiles and recipes you can create with your kids and STEM activities you can do with your kids. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're really, really proud of it. And we also want you to use the contact button at the top of the page to let us know what we're doing right, let us know what we could be doing better, and let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And if you are an author, please be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com and discover all the ways that we can help you celebrate your fantastic children's book. You can be a guest here on the podcast. You can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel, and you can take advantage of our amazing promotional packages. How can you learn about all that? It's simple. Go to readingwithyourkids.com, click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and scroll on down to find out all about all those wonderful programs we have for authors. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Francine Piriano Davila. Please be sure to check out Cloud Monsters. Also want to thank our sponsor, Scott Feld. Be sure to check out Dax to the Max, and please be sure to visit his website, mindsinmotion.com. We also want to thank Angela Lieb, the author of the Bella Santini Chronicles. Be sure to check out book number 1, Bella Santini and the Land of Everlasting Change. I think my team deserves a big thank you. Thank you so much to Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Belcastro, Ashley Contouris. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.